bottom line, the Stone Cold Sensei.
I have a lot of things I want to get off my chest.
This is The Pencil, a professional wrestling podcast starring Renny D and friends. Thanks for listening to The Pencil. Subscribe to the show on iTunes and follow us on Twitter at Pencil Podcast.
Hey, this is Chris Jericho. You're listening to The Pencil with Renny D. Pencil, baby. He's a pencil. Yeah, boy.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome inside episode 23 of The Pencil. It's the professional wrestling podcast with me, Renny D, and my boy, Dirt Mester. Coming off probably our biggest podcast of the short history of us. We had a pretty good time, I think, on Sunday.
We did. It's actually going to be a couple podcasts here. You're going to hear part one today. Part two will be next week with Mr. Ken Anderson. Pretty exciting. We got to do it in person. It was quite an experience. Mr.
Ken Anderson, Mr. Kennedy, however you want to refer to him as. And if this is your first time listening to our podcast, whether it be on iTunes, PodBean, Stitcher, YouTube, or however you listen to our podcast, thank you. We appreciate it. If you like it, do us a favor. Subscribe to us on Facebook. It's /Pencil Podcast. We're on Twitter at Pencil Podcast, pencilpodcast.com. And share us with your friends and family, all that good stuff. And if you have a chance, go ahead and rate and review us, too, on your podcast platform. And like Travis alluded to, we have Mr. Anderson from Impact Wrestling. We went to his house thinking that we were going to be there from time A to time B, and that time probably 45 minutes to an hour at most. We sat there for a good 6 hours.
It was a Sunday night, my man. I mean, I had to work on Monday, but there's a lot worse things to be tired for at work than if you're just hanging out or talking wrestling with Mr. Kennedy.
I mean, if I have one word of advice for you and you're listening, and this is either the first time or you've been listening to all 23 episodes now, if you haven't strapped up yet in 22 episodes, and I don't condone strapping up ever, that's a fact, but if you haven't, you need to strap up for this one, because it's intense, man. I mean, in 3 hours, we have 3 hours of content, and tonight we're going to cover Impact Wrestling, his TNA days, because tomorrow on Destination America, part of the Discovery Networks. It's available on all cable outlets. Whether or not you pay for the packages is one thing, but you'll be able to watch the debut of Impact Wrestling on Destination America, previously on Spike TV. I'm hoping for big things. I'm not going to give away anything on tomorrow's show as far as who's going to be there, who's not going to be there. We have gotten some of that information, which is great, but honestly, some of the stuff that you're going to hear, whether it be this week or next week, are going to be things that you're hearing for the first time ever. We've both scrubbed the internet trying to find the things that we talked about. Some of the things we could find, most of the things you couldn't.
I thought, of all the interviews I've done in my almost 10, 6 years since college, being a journalism major, I don't remember one being as long and as invasive as what it was with Ken. His memory is absolutely remarkable. From his 15 years in the business, the stories he has about some of his best friends, some of his guys in the business that he was closest with, and some of the biggest stars from whoever you want to say. I'm not even going to bring up all of them because it's too hard. The stories he has are literally amazing. It was an amazing 5.5 hours. It flew by. I wish we could do it again tomorrow.
It did fly by, and he invited us into his home. So for that, obviously, we want to thank him. Thank his wife,
his beautiful
his
wife, Sean. It was great. They were amazing.
They shared their dining room table with us, shared their alcohol with us, and it's great. Like I mentioned, I for those of you who don't know much about me, I've worked the indie scene for the past 12 years. I've worked on a lot of shows with Ken. When he got signed by WWE, it was one of the main reasons why I still tuned in every Monday, although the rest of the product I thought was stale. He was one of the main reasons why I tuned in. So for me to be able to sit at his dining room table with him, ask him about not only his TNA days, but the time in WWE, and obviously he's been involved in some of the biggest things. He won Money in the Bank at WrestleMania 23. He wrestled the last televised match of Eddie Guerrero's life. He spent time with Chris Benoit in the gym. Has thoughts on that situation.
And there will be there will be much to talk about outside of the ring as much as there is inside the ring. There's stories. I mean, we're talking football, we're talking religion, we're talking
That's right,
his podcast, we're talking beliefs outside of the realm of professional wrestling, where he came from, that kind of stuff. I mean, it's a good time for anybody that's interested in that, or Mr. Kennedy himself. I mean, it's going to be a big time.
Big time. So just make sure you hang on for that. We have a couple of things that we want to touch base on here first before we get to the Ken Anderson interview. I want to touch on Wrestle Kingdom 9 real quick before we hop into last night's Monday Night Raw taping. There's a lot of talk on the internet, a lot of buzz about Wrestle Kingdom 9. We took part in that buzz. We had Lance Hoyt on, or Lance Archer on last week, promoting the big show. Overall, from what I gathered online from the Twitter mentions, and I guess I'm just basing this strictly on social media, it seems like in America it was an overall success. I don't think a lot of people maybe tuned in live at 2 a.m. to watch it, but the replay at 7 p.m., I think a lot of people did watch it. The price tag was $34.95. If they got 10,000 buys, I believe, that's all they were looking for in America. 10,000 wrestling fans to buy it. They were going to continue to do this with promotions like AAA to Mexico, whatever. We started watching the show. We watched it on replay. We started watching some of the stuff yesterday before Raw. We DVR'd it, and it's different. I don't watch a lot of Japanese wrestling. I have watched some New Japan shows before. A lot of cool spots, a lot of cool moves. Like for instance, the opening contest was the Four Corners tag match. A lot of action, and I thought it was very hard for JR to call it because there was so much going on. Not a lot of in-ring psychology, but a lot of cool spots. Like you and I even looked at each other a couple times after some moves and be like, "That was cool." Because we don't see that stuff on Mondays and Fridays, and so it's nice. So for people who sit there and gripe about WWE, and which I'm going to do tonight, and I'll just be forthcoming about that now. But for people who gripe about WWE, there are other, I guess, avenues to watch pro wrestling. There are other channels of pro wrestling out there. It's not just WWE. And although we talk about strictly WWE for the most part on this podcast, there is Impact Wrestling. There is Ring of Honor. There is Lucha Underground. There's AAA. There's New Japan. And there's the Indies and YouTube. So honestly, the best way to tell WWE that you are dissatisfied with their product is to turn it off, I guess, would be my thing for it. I mean, I watch it every Monday because I love pro wrestling, I love the WWE, but also because of this podcast now, I have an obligation to watch as much wrestling as possible to try to be as credible as possible, I guess, on this podcast. I just totally admitted my feelings about last night's Monday Night Raw. Dirt, you have maybe a little different take on it than I do?
Yeah, we're going to jump into it. So Raw last night, first Raw of 2015. The last Raw of 2014, I think both of us were pleasantly surprised with.
The last two Raws of 2014, I think we both had under expectations that they to me, they blew them out of the water for the last two of the year.
So going back to last week, the Authority was brought back at the end of the show by John Cena per Seth Rollins' request. This week begins right where last week ended, with the Authority on the underneath the Titantron, ready to talk to everybody in the ring. So you tell me what you did or did not like about the opening segment. How did you feel that they did bringing back the Authority full time as the first Raw that they were going to be there?
I liked how they opened with the entire roster in the ring. That sets the tone early on. The Authority's back. They're going to put their foot down. And you and I both right away, I think, were under the same assumption that, hey, if they're back now, that they need to punish the guys that were in the Survivor Series match. And we're going to get to that here in a bit. I was taken back by the fact that Seth Rollins got put into the main event at Royal Rumble. I didn't see that coming. I don't think we've ever mentioned that on the podcast. We've never mentioned that in passing.
No,
that we thought he'd be in that match.
I don't think anybody. I never saw that assumed by anyone that would be a change made. It's an exciting change. I think it gives an entire new dynamic to the match. We've seen Lesnar Cena many times. This is going to be Seth Rollins' first title match and his first time in the ring with Brock Lesnar all in one night. And he does things in the ring that are completely different than the ground and pound Lesnar and Cena. So I think it's going to be an unbelievable change to the match that's only going to be good. And, I mean, that's a big positive from last night.
So you're looking forward to it now being a triple threat match, more so than you were if it was Cena-Lesnar?
Yes.
Okay. And I'm not. And I only say that because Rollins has that case. Right, and you mentioned last night, well, he can cash it in any title he wants. Okay, maybe you can, but why would you, right? I mean, if your goal in pro wrestling, I mean, okay, it's scripted, whatever, but your goal is to be the world champion, you're not going to cash it in on Dolph Ziggler's U.S. title or was U.S. title. Intercontinental, sorry. So I don't like it because I did like that they were kind of billing it as the final battle between Cena and Lesnar. To me, by him being in that match, it makes that match more predictable in the sense that Lesnar's not walking out of Philadelphia the WWE World Heavyweight Champion, and that's what I think now.
True. I also don't think that Lesnar's going to leave.
Because prior to that, I was still. I mean, you and I both maybe thought Cena could, but like I think we were still to the point where, it makes the most sense for Lesnar to still walk out champion based on the history and based on him being off TV for 4 months and whatever it might be. But now, I really feel like Cena can go over clean. And then Rollins can cash in right at Royal Rumble, And I guess if I had to put all my money on it right now, I put my money on Rollins leaving the Royal Rumble the champion, which seems really weird because I don't know if he's ready for that type of pressure, that type of spotlight, and maybe I'm jumping the gun.
I think the biggest thing that it does is protects Brock Lesnar, because Brock Lesnar is the beast. He has not been beaten in over a year or whatever it's been. It protects him to the point where he does not have to lose the match.
I didn't think about that.
So Cena might beat Rollins. Rollins might beat Cena. If he's not involved in the finish, it protects him going into WrestleMania. It protects WWE because of Lesnar's contract situation. If he's gone after WrestleMania, if you don't have him go into WrestleMania as the champion, it makes his match more interesting. Because if he goes in as the champion, he's losing. Now, I think it gives him an opportunity to put Lesnar in a different program without the belt being involved, which 3 or 4 weeks ago we would have thought was crazy. After what happened at the beginning of Raw last night, I actually like it.
Okay, well, that you brought that up because I didn't think about that, and I don't want to ramble on too much about this because we do have other stuff that we want to get to, but Cena pins Rollins at Rumble, walks out of Philadelphia, the new champion.
Cena pins Rollins.
Lesnar gets a rematch.
Lesnar F5s the shit out of Cena 3 times, and Rollins cashes his on Cena.
But Lesnar still gets a rematch.
He doesn't.
Contractual clause.
Orton hasn't gotten his.
I'm just saying.
Daniel Bryan hasn't gotten his.
And his contract's up the day after WrestleMania, so essentially...
At Fastlane?
He's not wrestling Fastlane. If his last contract date, it's gonna be at WrestleMania 31. Rollins faces Cena for the World Heavyweight Championship as a challenger at WrestleMania 31. I could definitely see that. If that plays out to what we just talked about, where he doesn't get pinned and he's protected, that he gets his rematch at one of those, and it's at WrestleMania.
If they bring back the idea of the rematch, I feel like they haven't respected it for more than a year. But I mean, they've let Lesnar do a lot of stuff that the other guys don't. So maybe he would get his rematch if he does lose. But we'll see.
Here's my takeaway that I did not like, and I think we're both going to be in agreement on this one, is how they treated Sting. Triple H alluded to him as this painted-faced Joker, Sting, and just...
multiple times.
Yeah, just terrible. Made him seem like a cartoon. And that was the biggest shock to a lot of people of 2014. We haven't seen him yet, but for him to not be more furious, obviously he's back in power, but he should still be more furious, like demand answers. I want Sting here. I want to know why. He should be the one doing that.
Yeah, making fun of him makes no sense.
It doesn't make sense.
There were some things that the Authority did that made a lot of sense, but that part does not make sense. Just making a joke out of it, haha, thanks John Cena for bringing us back. We're going to troll you all night kind of thing. But just making fun of Sting in 2 10-minute segments or 10-second segments just... It really makes Survivor Series look unimportant.
Yeah, and it makes Sting look very unimportant now. Because, all right, what exactly did that prove? What exactly did that accomplish? For 2 months, we had some up and down TV.
Yeah, what was it, 40 days? It wasn't even 2 months.
Exactly what does that accomplish? I mean, if they expect us just to forget about it, that whatever. I mean, Sting's going to come back, and he should come back. He should have came back last night.
Correct.
On the first show of 2015, I was based on the contractual details that I've read, if they're true, that he has multiple dates to actual wrestle. If he's not going to wrestle at Royal Rumble and they're going to wait till, basically an Undertaker type of a thing, it might lose its luster at that point. Because after last night, him just making fun of Sting, I don't give a shit to see Sting anymore.
No, and I don't know if it's Sting. I don't know if they're building towards a him and Triple H program. I assumed that's what was going to happen. Maybe at this point, we get Sting's music during the Rumble. Rollins leaves the Royal Rumble, and we with the title, and we look at those two for the title at WrestleMania.
That'd be fucking terrible.
I mean, I don't know. There's options, but I don't. there's more questions than answers right now, which I guess isn't always a bad thing, but Sting probably deserved more respect or more explanation at this point of why he was there and what he's doing now.
No Sting, no Lesnar, no Orton, which is fine. I understand that. No Daniel Bryan. That's the one I kind of don't understand. He came back last week and says he's coming back. He doesn't have to wrestle, but be on TV. Because we don't need to see his face for the first time now in Philly. We don't need to see Randy Orton's face for the first time in Philly. We don't need to see Sheamus for the first time in Philly. But I feel like we're going to see them. Although I mean,
it would be overkill to bring them all back at the same time. I think they're going to stagger it. I think we'll get D-Bry next week.
We need to have him in the Authority.
I think we'll get Orton maybe the week before the Rumble. Maybe Sheamus waits until the Rumble and stagger them all together. And I think, it would have been better if they would have had somebody, even if it's just Daniel Bryan last night. But I mean, there was 2.5 hours in the middle of the show that sucked. But
thank you.
but let's look at that. First 30 minutes was good.
Well, the first 30 minutes also included your boy, the man that you picked as like your favorite wrestler in the WWE. Also found himself on the short end of the stick last night, 90-day suspension, ended up getting fired, whatever. I mean, he lost the Intercontinental title on Raw to Bad News Bear, and now in the last 2 weeks, 2 major title changes. The tag titles happened last week. IC title happened this week. I don't agree with the title change. I don't like it, but now that the fact, obviously since he's getting fired, it had to happen, I guess. But I just don't see how, like, Dolph seems like he gains a lot of steam, and he's got a lot of luster behind him, and then they just fucking cut him down. They take his title, they fire him. What's he going to do now? Come in the Rumble and, like, be a serious threat when he comes back for the Rumble and gain that fan stardom back again? It hurts his character more than anything.
As soon as it happened, all I thought was, really? Like, don't fire him on the first... If they're firing them, I don't want to see them until WrestleMania.
He has to come back as a heel.
If they come back in 3 weeks, it's the same thing and almost more of a joke than the Authority thing.
It's angles recycled.
Correct. And don't fire people and have them back in 5 weeks or 4 weeks. If you're legitimately gone, then you're fired. And I don't know if this means Vince McMahon has to get back on TV to hire them back.
I don't know.
Or, I mean, there's been nothing said that now, John Cena can bring them back or whatever, like he did the Authority. Yeah, I didn't like that idea, but I understood it because on this show we have complained about WWE insulting our intelligence and this thing and that thing kind of over and over again. And in this instance, they had to fire them because it wouldn't have made sense for them not to. The Survivor Series stipulation was if you lose the match, you are fired. They won, but the Authority's back anyway, so why wouldn't the Authority fire them? I don't necessarily like it. I mean, getting rid of 3 baby faces who have all been built the last 3 months, 3 weeks before the Rumble, I don't think is a good thing. But I don't know. I feel like they've painted themselves into a corner and they kind of made themselves do some things that now I don't know that is going to be the best.
I mean, we have, is it 3 more Raws or 2 more Raws till Rumble? Let's see. It'll be the 12th, the 19th. So we have 3 more.
Yeah, the 20... No, 2.
No, 2 more.
25th,
so 2 more
yeah, the 25th or 26th.
No, there's 3 more then. 3 more yet. Because it was the 5th, so we'll have the 12th, the 19th, the 26th. No, that doesn't make sense.
No,
yeah, you're right. So we got 2.
The Rumble.
Yeah, sorry. We have 2 Raws left, so that's a lot to... And we don't even know who's going to be in the Royal Rumble besides Roman Reigns and Daniel Bryan.
I hope it's more than 2. It's going to be really boring if it's 2.
There were a lot of things last night that I did not like. And we've alluded to one, and although the Ziggler match was good... One match that I did not think was good, but I also don't understand the direction of the characters, is Bray Wyatt and Dean Ambrose. Is this the end of those two? Because if it is, where do they go to next? I don't feel that these two ever built to what they should have been.
There was no culmination. It didn't feel to me like last night was. Maybe it was the most brutal match, and they made them use the most weapons and the most finishing maneuvers to finish it. And if that was supposed to feel like, the big deep breath, it's finally over, it didn't do that for me. I was never excited when it started. Throughout it, they wrestled a lot of matches, and it never resonated with me.
Here's the positive. Like, if Raw last night was the best Raw of 2015, it was also the worst Raw of 2015. It was the first one. We got all these guys coming back that we just talked about. You can only imagine that it's going to get a lot better, right? You get a TV with Orton, you get TV with Daniel Bryan, you get TV with Sheamus back as a heel.
Ambrose and Wyatt now in different directions. Bad News Barrett as a champion, 3 baby faces that are fired that who knows if and when they're going to be
I need Dolph
recycled.
to come back as a heel. But I feel like they were building him so much as this babyface that they don't want to kill that momentum. He just came out with a new T-shirt, so I'm looking forward to his heel turn. I don't know when it's going to be. I'm also, I guess, if it left me last night wondering one thing, and beyond the disappointment, it is where did they go with John Cena from here? Because he really, because like you mentioned, a lot of people hate Jonathan Cena. Like, they hate him, right? They can't stand him. They're tired of the Cena push. Although he was a big part in last night's show, he didn't wrestle a match. He didn't really have much promo. He kind of sat there silent. So, I don't know. I don't know what to do with Cena, but they're going to have to do something. And who knows, maybe he finds his way into the main event at WrestleMania. It's a big WrestleMania, obviously.
Wouldn't be crazy.
It's always a big WrestleMania. I mean, looking back on 3 hours last night, I'm not going to ask you what they think what they should have done differently, because I think we can make a list of it. Give me your biggest highlight from last night, if you on 3 hours, like your number one highlight last night.
Rollins' reaction whenever Triple H put him in the match.
Yeah, and I
jumping up and down like a little
great.
fucking kid. That was great.
It was great.
That was solid healing by Seth Rollins. I like that.
And it may have been maybe he didn't even know. I don't know.
Yeah, you mentioned that. That'd be funny. I would like to know that if he actually didn't know. That'd be great.
Because they've done those things before. What's your low point then?
Let's see. The low point. I mean, the Ascension's promo was awful.
that. Let's not spend any time on that. That was terrible, and it sounds like Lance Storm even tweeted out that he turned off Raw because of the disrespect they showed the Road Warriors. Like, he thought that was just like extremely bad.
Like, that was a bad promo, and then JBL buried them in commentating, and they've been on TV for 2 weeks.
And
so.
JBL's supposed to be a heel commentator, but okay.
Whatever. What do you go?
So, I don't want to spend a lot more time talking about Raw, to be honest with you. I don't think that there's much to talk about.
It doesn't warrant it. That's all right. We've given it enough time.
I think that we owe it to ourselves to just basically let last night sink in. The viewers know what that is. I mean, we have a lot of other wrestling that we can watch. We got Impact tomorrow night, which we will, if we don't watch live, I'm sure we'll watch on DVR. And it's live from New York. It's going to be live taping. So, should be good. I really just want to kind of get the listeners to part one. It is, it's a lengthy part one, but like Travis and I said, we spent an entire evening with Ken, and I think my takeaway from at least, and maybe we'll get into this more next week too, is he still loves the business. He has a lot of passion for the business. He's 38 years old, but you could tell, at least I could tell, that he really enjoys still doing what he loves to do.
And I thought, what shocked me, I mean, I wasn't surprised that he was a nice guy. He had no I mean, he could have given us an hour of his time, told us the short answers of every question we asked, but he didn't, and he had no reason to be as nice to us as he was. And as much time as we spent there, and as many stories as he told us, we wouldn't be doing our due diligence if we didn't let you guys hear most of them. So, let's get to it. Let's just let him listen to Ken.
All right, guys. Enjoy part one with Ken Anderson. Again, just before we go, more information on this podcast, all the podcasts, all 23 episodes, pencilpodcast.com. We're at Pencil Podcast on Twitter. Facebook /Pencil Podcast. You want to interact with Travis directly, he's at Travis Mester. I am at Real Renny D. We are also on, obviously, iTunes, PodBean, Stitcher. We have a YouTube channel. I have a YouTube channel for my wrestling matches as well. Check it out, guys, and enjoy the next hour and 20 minutes here with Ken Anderson. Strap up.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is Impact Wrestling Superstar, Mr. Anderson. Wait for it, Anderson. You're listening to The Pencil with Renny D and the Dirty.
You think you know me?
We are having a great episode, but coming up next is our guest of the evening. You've been listening to The Pencil, a professional wrestling podcast with me, Renny D, and my friends. Be sure to subscribe on iTunes, PodBean, Stitcher, and YouTube. And follow us on Twitter at Pencil Podcast.
Scared what you might find, maybe. Scared what you might find, maybe. Scared what you might find, maybe.
So we literally are sitting with Mr. Anderson, former two-time TNA World Heavyweight Champion at your home. And we just saw the Dallas Cowboys beat the Detroit Lions, which means next week they travel to Lambeau Field.
Yeah, the frozen tundra.
Your hometown, to play your Green Bay Packers.
Yeah.
How excited are you?
I'm excited, and I think I don't want to jump the gun and look ahead, but especially the way that the Cowboys played tonight, in at least the first half, I think Green Bay's got a pretty good shot. If they played the way that Green Bay's been playing for at least the last half of our season, I think we got a pretty good shot. However, that means that we'll probably then go to Seattle, and that's going to be a tough one.
And you're sitting at the table with a 49er fan, myself, 0-2 against Seattle this year. I don't even know if I want to say it, Derek.
I'm a Bears fan.
He's a Bears fan.
I blame my uncle. But.
Gotcha.
So we don't know what the playoffs feel like this year, which is funny for me anyway for the first time. But Dallas Cowboys were America's team for the longest time, right?
I think. So I need to say that the Green Bay Packers were America's team. They were dubbed that a long time ago, and then I think in the 70s, the Dallas Cowboys decided to name themselves America's team. That was a self-chosen. And in my opinion, my humble opinion, nicknames are given, not chosen. And they started calling themselves America's team. But in my, as I said, humble opinion, I believe that the Green Bay Packers are America's team.
Well, I think the general public consensus is the Packers are America's team now, right?
I believe so. I mean, I'm a Bears fan inside the division, and I would still consider them America's team.
And the thing is like, with most Packers, you never hear about guys getting in trouble. You don't hear about attitudes. Maybe they keep it under wraps. It doesn't seem to be that way because they seem to all get along pretty well, and they have a good on-screen. It is entertainment, right?
Yeah.
On-field chemistry. But nobody. I should find some wood and knock on it, but nobody can say anything negative about Aaron Rodgers. I've never heard anybody say anything negative about the guy.
Outside of the game of football, I've heard some things that he's quote-unquote a prick. But
really?
Yeah, I've heard that.
I've
but
never heard that.
He's the best in the world. I mean, at the quarterback position, and the best NFL player, I think. Yeah. And this is coming from a Niner. So you guys, I think, will definitely take it next week. We saw some struggles tonight from Dallas in the game.
Yeah.
Going to Seattle, like we mentioned, the 12th man, very difficult. If they beat Seattle, first, if they get past Dallas and they play Seattle, will you book your tickets to San Francisco or Arizona? Where's the
Arizona
this year?
Glendale.
Will you go to Glendale to see the game?
No.
Did you go to Dallas when they played down there?
No, I didn't. And honestly, being a lifelong Packer fan, this sounds weird, but having been around crowds now for the last 10 years, I don't like crowds. I don't like big throngs of people. I just want to go and...
The experience from your couch is good enough.
I would prefer to just have some friends over, or have some good food, grill up, a couple beverages, and just enjoy that. Are
you like that in public too? Because I know Eric Rowan, who's with the WWE now, worked the indie scene in Minnesota. I was tag partners with him for a while. We had a conversation that he doesn't necessarily like people at this point because he's around people all the time in the arena stage. So if he goes to something like the State Fair or where there's a big conglomerate of people, he's not a fan of it. Are you similar to that, or are you okay with a situation like that?
I'm okay with it to a degree, but I prefer to I'm a homebody. I prefer to go to the gym, where I live here in Minnesota. Everything that I need is pretty close.
Right.
I've got my gym is 5 miles away, probably less. The grocery store, Chipotle, Target,
Need Chipotle.
Best Buy. That's it. The place to get my hair cut. That's about all I need.
It's all here in Woodbury.
Yeah, and that's sort of what I like to do. And every once in a while, I like to go out, but I prefer to just go out with a smaller group of friends. And I guess the nice thing about wrestling right now is that it's sort of been on the decline for the last few years, and it's not as popular as it once was.
And I've always, even when I was at WWE, I could go to the Mall of America and walk around with my blonde hair, and maybe 5 or 10 people would approach me. And generally, fans are pretty cool too. Like they're not obnoxious or anything like that. So, and probably even less so today. I mean, I just went to the Mall of America yesterday, and nobody bothered me or nobody said anything to me. And it doesn't even really bother me. It's just part of the business. If you don't like to be noticed and you don't like people coming up to you and asking you to sign autographs or take pictures, whatever, you're in the wrong business.
I agree.
So.
Yeah, it's definitely comes with the territory.
Yeah.
That's for sure. And I mean, obviously, you got your hands full. You're a father now.
Yeah.
Twins, which they are adorable.
Thank you.
I will admit that. How has that changed your life? Almost a year ago, the 2 little ones came into this world, and it became Ken Anderson daycare at that point. And
literally
in wrestling, there's either you grow up real quick, or you stay immature for quite a while. It's one or the other. But I think when you introduce new people into this world that are because of you, that if you hadn't grown up at that point, you damn sure better real quick.
Yeah, I think it's cliche. People say it all the time, but it changes the way you think about everything. And I went from providing for one person and myself, 2 people basically, to now I'm providing for 4 people. And one of those people, if something happens to me or whatever, she can take care of herself, my wife. But those 2 little ones, they're at sort of my mercy. So yeah, I guess it just changes the way that you look at. It changes the way that I look at the business. It changes the way that I look at the long term. Like, what do I do after the business? That kind of thing. So.
And in all fairness, let's not leave out your dog. You got 5.
Yeah,
you got
5.
We don't want him being jealous anymore.
Well, he's very jealous too. I mean, he's just, since those 2 little ones have come in and taken up so much of our time and our, we spend so much time focusing on them that we tend to forget him sometimes. And I always had people tell me that would happen. They said, because we loved our dog, we put pictures of him on Instagram and whatever. And everybody always said, like, AJ Styles used to tell me, once those kids come into the world, everything will change and you'll cease to love that dog as much. And if that dog growls at your kids, you'll freaking want to punt him down the street. And no way, there's no way. And the first time it happened, the first time he lifted his lip at them, I chucked him over just about chucked him over the railing.
Well, I mean, I guess how we want to structure this, and there's a lot to talk about. You are a very popular individual, so first off, thanks for letting us come in here and do this.
Well, I'm glad you guys are here.
As of when this recording drops tomorrow, Impact Wrestling will make its official debut on Destination America. And they just released that you signed a new contract with them, so congratulations with that, to be around for them.
Thank you.
Again. How much of a relief is this for the locker room, knowing that there was a TV deal that got put in place?
At least for me, I was never worried about it. I knew that we've been the top-rated show on Spike TV for like the last 9 years. And I know that somebody will take that 1.5 million viewers. There are virtually 400 networks out there right now that are screaming, dying, begging for somebody to come up with original content. They'll take the 1.5 million viewers. Somebody would. With that being said, it's really extraordinarily hard for anybody to secure a network deal in this day and age. So the fact that TNA was able to go out there and sell this to the Discovery family, Destination America, is a huge thing. And if you look at the lineup, me personally, the shows that are on Destination America are the kinds of shows that I like to watch. Stuff about ordinary Americans. There's a lot of shows about grilling and barbecuing and stuff like that. And So I think that the network itself has a lot of potential. I know that it's sort of new, and I've heard the complaint that a lot of providers don't carry it. But, I think with enough voices requesting, it'll happen and it'll take off.
And that's going to say, because, Travis, we have, DirecTV?
Yep.
Have we done a search for it?
I do not have it, I don't believe.
And I think DirecTV may carry it, but I think you have to upgrade your package.
Correct. They have it on a package, but not on the
because they
package
virtually
that I have
carry,
it
because
now.
they carry even like the El Rey network. I mean, they carry a lot of stations. It's just you upgrade to it.
I probably will be upgrading too. I watched a lot of it the last.
Yeah, and that's the
6
thing.
months, I've
Like,
watched a lot more of
you
it.
kind of became the TNA and Impact guy, and I would watch it for certain parts of the show. Ken was one. Austin Aries was another. I guess I got a bad taste in my mouth. About a year ago or something when I don't know if it was creative was kind of. It was stale-ish, I guess. The wrestling was still good. It's just some of the... I don't know if... This is maybe a good question for you. At one point, was TNA trying to virtually, I guess, be, WWE be, like, with their storylines, be more sports and entertainment? Because what you guys did in the last 6 months was way better than what was going on before that. I think, at least,
Yep.
Travis, you and I can agree that we
Yeah.
enjoyed the product in the last 6 months.
For watching purposes, I thought so anyway.
It was more entertaining.
Have you heard that before or backstage, or do you just feel like you were going in the right direction in the last?
Yeah, I think that the thing that's often overlooked from the business standpoint, from the business aspect of this business, is that our creative department has the hardest job in entertainment. We don't have an off season. Most television shows, a sitcom runs 24 episodes.
Right.
They're 22 minutes. You get an hour-long program. Generally, what do they get? 44 minutes, 45 minutes
With commercials, if that.
With commercials.
Yep.
24 episodes at most. If you're on Showtime, you do an hour show. You do 12 episodes or 14 episodes, whatever. Our writers have to write content for 2 hours of television every week. Plus, you've got explosion matches that air in foreign markets.
Right.
You've got web content that needs to take place. So 52 weeks a year, you got 2 hours. What does that work out to be? 104 hours of television a year.
Plus pay-per-views.
Plus pay-per-views, which are 2.5 to 3 hours long generally. We've got some pay-per-views that air only in foreign markets. So it's just, I think it's hard to continuously come up with new material. And so I think we tend to fall into these sort of ruts. And it's not for a lack of trying, and it's not for a lack of talent. I think TNA has an amazing talent roster. I think that's never been it's never been an area of contention. Most of the criticism that I've heard is TNA has a tremendous talent roster. But then again, the criticisms that I hear about TNA are the same criticisms that I hear about the other brands out there. And so it's just, at some point, I think that wrestling fans tend to overthink things too much. It's wrestling. It's pro wrestling. I mean,
would you consider TNA pro wrestling or sports entertainment?
I mean, sports entertainment. I think it's just entertainment, period. I've always tended to look at the business, and I know a lot of my colleagues will disagree with me, but I've always looked at wrestling as no different than any other form of entertainment. It's theater. It's Rocky Horror Picture Show with crowd participation. I don't know if you guys have ever seen a Rocky Horror Picture Show.
Yep.
People go to these theaters. For those of you who don't know, the Rocky Horror Picture Show is probably be classified as a B movie.
Sure.
At the time.
Popular, but yes.
Yeah, very popular. It's got a cult following,
Right.
and people go to the theater and they interact with the movie that is on the screen. The people don't talk back to them. They just... So it's sort of like wrestling is that. It's theater. We tell stories of good versus evil. It's acting. We're actors. That's it. I'm part of a scripted, episodic television show that has directors and lighting and producers and writers and all the other things. But at the end of the day, if you shot a guy into the ropes, he wouldn't frickin' bounce off the other ropes and come right, he wouldn't pivot and turn at the precise moment every single time and
come back.
He'd frickin' hold on to the ropes, or he'd trip, or so I tend to think that people overthink things too much. It's wrestling. You've got to, and that's sort of the way that I always looked at it too as a kid. I remember having a hard time sort of letting that stuff go, and then when I started watching, I didn't start watching wrestling until I was in my 20s.
Right.
So I was 20. And when I started watching, I was like, well, there are some things that sort of seem ridiculous, but you have to let them go and just
understand what you're watching before you start throwing out crazy ideas.
Yeah, I think as a fan watching it, we look past this guy's not supposed to ricochet back off the ropes. Like, we are emotionally invested in good versus evil. And you just mentioned, it's a scripted product, and we're not going to sit here and try to church it up for people. They know that,
Yeah.
But if I come to you and say, you do that fake wrestling shit, or you are a fake pro wrestler, what's your response to that?
Yeah, I do. And it's fake to the degree that our matches are predetermined. We work with each other to make it look like we're hurting each other. But people watch Terminator 2, and they see a guy turn into liquid metal, and one guy's in a helicopter and the other guy drives a motorcycle off a 30-story building and then latches onto the helicopter and then morphs into liquid metal and pours himself through the windshield, and people say that's cool.
Right.
And then they watch wrestling and they say that's fake. Well, yeah.
I think the reason I asked you that was because you've had injuries in your career.
Yes.
I mean, you've had plenty of injuries in your career. So, I mean, yes, you're an actor, you're a stuntman. So if someone says it's fake, well, did you tear is it labrum, or what you tore?
I tore my lat, I tore my labrum.
Right. I mean, that's not fake.
Almost tore my triceps.
And these were all during matches. So, I mean, that's not fake.
Serious concussions, which I still probably feel the effects of to this day. I mean, it's fake to the degree that it's predetermined who's going to win and lose, and we try to work with each other. But it is an athletic endeavor, and things go wrong, and it hurts. I mean, there's no...
You can't fall from some of the places that you've fallen from and have it feel good.
Yeah, in the ring. I remember the first time I stepped foot in the ring, and he said, okay, kick your legs out and land on your back. And I thought it was going to be like a cushion, like it was going to be a trampoline, and it rung my bell. And then you have to do that. Some people, I always say, like, some people will get in a car accident. They'll be rear-ended at 15 miles per hour, and they will suffer for the rest of their lives, supposedly.
I was in that business once before. I know what you're talking about. I used to have to deal with these people.
I sort of question that whole thing, but let's just take people at their word and say that they're being accurate and they're being sincere, and that this car accident has caused them great pain for the rest of their lives. I get in a car accident 25 times a day.
Yeah.
4 or 5 days a week.
Yeah, let's not kid ourselves. The ring's not soft.
No, it's
I mean, even after taking bumps for myself, 12 years, and you've been wrestling how long now? 15 years. Like, it still hurts. I mean, especially then also you work a show that has a boxing ring, and that's a whole different aspect. And like
that was a ring that I learned to work in.
You learn quick to fall flat. And even when I did my little WWE thing a year and a half ago, they were saying this is going to be the best bump you ever had. It was the hardest bump I ever had. Like, I didn't realize how hard that damn ring was. I don't know if they were ribbing me or
they
what.
Say, you talk to the old timers and they'll tell you that ring is really, really soft compared to...
Oh, I bet. What they've done.
Yeah. The one that Hogan was doing leg drops on for years.
And now he's like 5 inches shorter than he used to be, or whatever it is.
If he's 5 inches shorter than he used to be, he's still damn tall.
Yeah, he's tall and still pretty damn big, too. One thing on the TV deal, which is great, because I think all wrestling fans alike wanted you guys to get a new TV deal, because if TNA would have dissolved, we have this Lucha Underground that's coming on, which is exciting. It's fun to watch. New Japan just had their Wrestle Kingdom show this morning, as of this taping, trying to come to the States with Jeff Jarrett, but when there's less competition, then the big guys can kind of ease, they say. I like the fact that you guys obviously have a new TV deal because, like I mentioned before, I hadn't been huge into Impact outside of the fact that I like to watch you guys because I grew up in this business with you guys.
Yeah.
With the new TV deal, are there going to continue, do you know, will there still be pay-per-views?
I believe so, but I believe what we've done is we've reduced the number of pay-per-views to
like
4 a year, which I have thought, I thought this when I worked for WWE, that 12 pay-per-views a year is just way too much.
Way too much. Way too many.
And you don't have time to build storylines. You don't have time to get emotionally invested in anything.
Right.
And
there's only 4 or 5 that matter a year.
Yeah.
And they sell it as such.
Yeah.
And not to jump ahead to we're going to talk about those WWE days and stuff in part 2, but didn't WWE at one point though, like SmackDown brand had their pay-per-views every other month and Raw had theirs? Wasn't like it was sort of been 6 and 6 at one point ish?
They did, but they did so much crossover that you virtually wrestled on every single pay.
Every show,
but even
show.
The WWE's NXT brand does 4 specials a year, and they blow up social media, and people are emotionally invested in them. Obviously, the wrestling is very good, much like Impact Wrestling. So 4 a year, I think, would be perfect.
I think it's a
people
perfect
pay
number.
for it.
I think it's a perfect number. I think it was the original number, right? When pay-per-views started, it was WrestleMania, Survivor Series, SummerSlam, and Royal Rumble.
Yeah.
And I just think that's a perfect amount of time to let things build organically. And it's interesting to me that you look at UFC. UFC has taken, and there are other, there's Bellator and other fight companies, have sort of taken a page out of wrestling. Amateur wrestling isn't on TV because to the average, ordinary American, it's boring.
Right.
They're not emotionally invested in these two guys. They don't understand the chess game that's going on. If you know wrestling, you get it and you love it. But to the layperson, it doesn't matter. What you need to do is you need to be emotionally invested in characters, and that's something I think that the UFC's done really well with.
Right.
In the last 10 years, is they've said, okay, let's see what's going on in these guys' lives. What motivates them to be here today?
UFC, their numbers have been kind of going down a little bit, but they're still making money, and they just had a pay-per-view last night. Very successful. Obviously, the buzz is they just signed CM Punk, which you've worked with before.
Yeah.
Smart by Dana White. Obviously, it's going to draw plenty of eyes to the product when he actually debuts in 6 or 8 months. Do you see UFC as competition?
No, I really don't. I think it's a different medium. It's a legitimate sport. We're more entertainment. We're on the
So are you 100% certain it's legitimate? Like, do you honestly feel that? I mean, I'm just asking because I don't know. Sometimes I question, and I question everything because I've been in this business, obviously. But I mean, if you had to bet this house on it, you would say it's 100% legitimate.
Well, I don't know if I'd say 100% legitimate, but.
No, I wouldn't bet my house on anything.
I would. Right. I wouldn't bet you $100 on anything. I'm a cheap bastard, but I would say I'm pretty certain that it's legit. I mean, people say that stuff about football all the time too. It's work. It's rigged. It's everything's a work. But you can't have 22 guys on the field plus officials all moving and have everything work out exactly the way that it just.
People consider trying to make everything a work. They act like it's really easy to make things a work.
When you got 2 guys in the ring and 1 referee, so you got 3 guys in the ring, it's virtually, we have roadblocks and things that pop up unexpectedly in that world. So just imagine you've got 30 guys on the field, roughly, with
I would
officials.
say if UFC is anything sports entertainment wise, it would be their pre-show conferences where they maybe tell the guy, "Hey, start something with so and so."
It's sort of like when you look at how they made the pumping iron, the documentary.
Yep, Arnold.
The Arnold documentary. It was Arnold versus Lou Ferrigno,
which is an awesome DVD for the record. So if you've never seen it, you need to watch it. It's so awesome. It is great.
I might watch it tomorrow just because it just popped into my head again.
And I mean it's fantastic. But
Can you imagine what it must be like to be me? And what they did in that situation, and they talk about it, I think, in extras in the newer release stuff, is that yes, it was a documentary, and they didn't script anything, but they put people in situations. They would tell Arnold, hey, when you're sitting at breakfast with this guy, like, give him a hard time, and see how he reacts. And that's the thing. You put people in these situations where they have to react.
Yeah.
And I think that's what happens in the UFC.
And I think it's funny, too. I went to the Olympia this last year in Vegas, and they even had a little bit of that going on with the showdowns with the heavyweights there as well, with the entertainment aspect. And I think everybody kind of takes a page from that because you want more eyes on the product. And if you can emotionally invest in one character or another, it's going to be extremely beneficial. With the new TV deal, I think some of the stuff, like tomorrow's, as of this, will be live, I believe, from New York. But are we going to do a similar thing where we tape 3 shows again? Or because obviously live shows, from a business standpoint, extremely expensive.
Yes.
And it's not worth it. I even think WWE sometimes should potentially tape 2 weeks in one. You're a fan of that?
It's not only expensive on the company as a whole, it is expensive on the life expectancy of the talent.
I would say you'd have to be gone every Thursday or whatever day it would be.
And so this way, the way that we've been doing things for the last year or so, we're able to tape, sometimes we tape 9 episodes in 3 or 4 days.
Mm-hmm.
Now, for that 3 or 4 days, we're taxed. I mean, they push us to the max. It's tough to do that kind of schedule. But then you get a couple weeks off. You get to go home. You get to recharge, regenerate.
See your family.
See your family.
Especially now.
Be a normal human being. Yeah.
Things that'll keep you sane.
Yeah. And keep your marriage healthy. So, I'm a huge fan of that stuff.
Circling back earlier, you mentioned how tough of a job creative has, how tough of a job the writers have, trying to keep storylines interesting and whatnot. On those 3 or 4 days, let's say in this past year, whenever you've been taping a bunch of shows for 2 or 3, 4 days, how often do you see those people, or how many writers are behind the curtain, or do you see them, or do you talk to them, or do you get there and then you're just told, here's what was decided?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's sort of different. I mean, sometimes, depending on what your storyline is, you can just sort of coast. I've never been one to politic. I try to stay out of the politics aspect. I'm a wrestler. I go there and I do what I'm told to a degree. If I disagree with something very adamantly, I'll try to present my case and argue. Sometimes I win, sometimes I don't. But, you're encouraged in this business, at least in this company, to... I think in the business overall, because I heard it at WWE all the time, like, you need to come up with stuff creatively and present it to creative. But then you hear the argument and the complaint from people that, well, I pitched this thing and then somebody else ends up doing it.
Yeah.
I haven't run into that stuff myself, but I know what happens. I know what happens, and I know that it's frustrating. And I also know that sometimes it's hard to get a hold of creative because they've got 30 other guys that are trying to call them all the time. And
are they in the building, or are they?
Yeah.
Okay.
How many are there on the writing staff with TNA?
I would say there's probably 5 or 6 that regularly get together and sit around the table.
So significantly less than the other guys, which is a good thing, I would think. I mean, I'm not
like the old school WWE, they say it was Vince and Pat Patterson and maybe one other guy.
Yeah.
Like, look at how good that stuff was.
Mm-hmm. And now they got 25, 30 there.
And they're all scared of their own shadow.
Right.
Which, it's just the environment that they're working in.
Right.
It's, everybody's afraid to lose their job. And,
Would you say the majority of the wrestlers, like you say, you come, you're told what creative came up with, and you make the best of it, you do what you're told, kind of as a quote-unquote good soldier?
Yeah.
Is that the majority of guys, or would you say, are there guys that show up, obviously don't need to name names, but every week's a situation, or every week it's a sit down with the creative, that kind of thing?
I think, I don't think it's a situation in the negative sense. I think it's a situation as far as like there are some people that just their minds work that way and they're constantly thinking of things and pitching and not necessarily they're not they get I guess some of these guys get labeled as being politickers, but they're really not. They care about what they do and they're passionate about the business, and they're passionate about it in a different way. I'm passionate about the business too, but I'm passionate about it. Like I said, I don't consider myself to be an extraordinarily creative person. I don't sit at home and go like, oh, this would be a great storyline. I just, if you get scripted, if you get cast in a movie, you don't write the script. Somebody else writes the script, and then you go and you perform that, those words.
So when it comes to the TV tapings, and I guess I bring this up because if creative throws you an idea that could virtually put your character in jeopardy outside the TNA ropes, and I mean maybe it won't, but I'm just saying like you have to make a living outside of TNA too,
right,
where you're at. So you're taking bookings across the states, maybe across seas, and and most guys who are booking you are booking the guy they see on TV.
Yeah.
If you have this quote unquote lame duck character, and you're
so if they tell me to come out to the ring wearing a dress,
right? And if it's a one-time thing, whatever. If it's a yearly thing at this point, I mean, you might not have people who want Mr. Anderson on the card anymore. So
right. Yeah.
I would think that's where the pushback would come for the most part.
Yes.
But I think they also, and maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong, the guys, the brasses that be, know that. And they're hopefully not going to put you in a situation that could jeopardize your career outside of Impact Wrestling. I mean, they're, I guess, sincere about what you do or sympathetic about what you do outside their company.
I think so. I do think so. I don't necessarily think that they think about that aspect of it. That's sort of my job to do. And I think they think that, they'll present things from time to time and you're just like, this is not, I don't see this as being a long-term positive thing. Like, for instance, when I first got to WWE, had my first match as Mr. Anderson against Funaki. The next week, I wrestled a guy up in Canada, a local guy.
Sure. An enhancement character.
Right, yeah. The little squash match. I was still Mr. Anderson. And the next week when I take that back. I don't know where the second week was, but the third week was in Canada. And I was told, hey, we want to change your name. And I was like, oh, I got to come up with a new name. I hoped that I would be Mr. Anderson,
That's all I know you as, Kamikaze Ken Anderson. I mean, that's
right. I wanted to keep my name. In talking with Vince, I went into a room with Vince and Stephanie and Johnny Ace and Kevin Dunn, and we all sat around, and Vince told me, like, I want you to come up with a new name. Actually, Johnny Ace approached me earlier in the day and said, Vince wants you to come up with a new name. He wants you to use Anderson. So I immediately called Paul Heyman. Paul and I talked it over. He suggested Kennedy.
Based on Vince's middle name, or is that a rumor?
Yes, he did say that, but it was sort of like I had actually said, I was Kamikaze Ken on the Indies. I had my logo,
right,
and I sort of wanted to keep that as like an homage to my independent wrestling career. I wanted to keep something from that part of my life. And so I was like, something K, and he's like, well, Kennedy's Vince's middle name. So that's it was a sort of a marriage of those two ideas. And I remember sitting in that meeting, and Vince said, do you have any catchphrases or anything? And I said, well, I've always said, nice guys finish last, thank God I'm an asshole. And I've always envisioned, and I said, I've seen you when you were doing your thing with Austin. The whole crowd would chant asshole at you as a pejorative, as a negative. And I always thought, if I can get people to think that asshole is a positive thing, then maybe they'll chant, that at me, but more of like, cheering for me.
Right.
And he said, well, we can't do that because it's a family show.
That's a good impersonation, by the way.
And
that's pretty good.
And
you didn't do the Johnny Ace impersonation.
No, I can't do it. Everybody does it, right? So Anyway, so he was like, well, you can't do that because it's a family show. And then Johnny said, well, hey,
there we go.
maybe you could be like, your first name could be Adam and your last name could be Hole. So you could say, nice guys finished last, thank God I'm an a-hole.
That's terrible.
And then Vince looked at Johnny like, what's wrong with you? And then he looked at me and he said, what do you think about that? And I said, to be honest, that's a great idea. But I sort of see that as being a flash in the pan type character, a guy that's on TV for 3 or 4 months. I plan on being around here for a long time. And I plan on being world champion. And you could just see like Vince was like a proud papa. Yeah, that's my boy, you know. And so then we came up with Kennedy. And so yeah, so from time to time you'll be pitched things and you have to sort of look at it like long term.
All right.
How is this going to affect me in the long term? That, if I would have, if my name would have been A-hole.
I don't want to think about it.
We might not be here. What do we know?
We might not be talking right now.
So, all right, so we talked about WWE, and obviously we're going to talk about that and a little bit later on too, but all right, so the WWE thing came to an end May of 2009. The 9-day no-compete thing. Mm-hmm. I remember watching the YouTube videos. You were at home on your couch, and they were entertaining. They were really good. And Travis, if you've never seen these, you need to check them out. They're funny. Basically,
we'll post them on the website.
Yeah, we'll post a link on our website, pencilpodcast.com. But they're great. And they are hopefully still out there. I remember seeing them right when they happened.
They're on my YouTube channel.
And then that came to an end, and then you finally signed with TNA. You debuted in January of 2010. Does that sound right? With TNA. Okay. You've had some pretty awesome opponents in Impact. Obviously, you had some great opponents over there as well.
Right.
Working with Russo when he was in Impact.
Yeah.
And Hogan was there too. I guess what was it like first working under Russo's creative direction for a while? And I don't know if Hogan had creative direction. I think he did for a while, or maybe a little bit here and there, or some say. First, I guess the main thing is working for Russo. Did you like it?
Yeah, I did. There were things that he asked me to do that I, looking back on it, I hate. Like he had me come out to the ring once, and because I wore a camouflage hat because I'm a hunter, and I've always been a big Steve Austin fan, and so he sort of, at one point, decided that I was going to wear there was a funeral or a wedding or something like that took place, probably a wedding. And he had me wear a camouflage tuxedo to the ring, and I was like,
I think I remember this.
I'm not that big of a hunter, you know, like it's just stuff like that. But I always liked working under Vince, and he was always receptive to. He would come up with an idea, and they knew that I was pretty good at talking, and so they sort of always said, "Here are your bullet points. Just." Here's where we're going. Get there in your own way. And so I had a lot of freedom. And it was Russo, you know, in WWE. I started it when I was on the Indies, right towards the end, before I got signed with WWE. When I got to OVW, I started doing it regularly, the asshole thing, where I started using the catchphrase. I had this vision that, like I said, the crowd would chant "a-hole" as a positive thing.
Right.
And when I pitched it to Vince, he hated it. He was like, "Nope, we can't do it. It'll never work." And Vince was the guy that, I don't even think it was intentional. I think I said something. I said the catchphrase on television, and the next week he scripted. He said, I was doing an interview backstage with Christy Hemme, and I was wrestling Jeff Hardy, and Jeff Hardy's fans at the time were called the Creatures of the Night. And he had in the script for me, you know, Jeff has his own fans. He calls them this. Well, I got my own fans too, and they're Anderson's assholes. And they all started chanting right at that very second, "We are assholes. We are assholes." And I was like, can you imagine? Like, at WrestleMania. I wanted to first say it at WrestleMania 23 when I won the Money in the Bank, and they had me go backstage and do it.
I watched that promo today.
And they wanted, and they actually told me at that time, I remember Michael Hayes saying, we want this to be your Austin 316 moment. When Austin won the Royal Rumble and said...
King of the Ring.
Or King of the Ring, I'm sorry.
Right.
Yeah, right. King of the Ring. He said, Austin 316 says, I just whipped your ass. And that, boom, next day, people are holding signs in the audience.
Still wearing t-shirts.
Still to this day, one of the hottest selling items in professional wrestling. And so they told me we want you to do that. And if you watch that interview, I say, I wanted, and I asked, and that was my big regret, is that I asked permission.
Should have just said it.
And they say, like, you should ask for forgiveness.
Right.
Because if you ask for permission and they tell you no, then you can't do it.
Right.
If you do it and it works, you're golden.
And do that in pro wrestling.
Fails,
do it in pro wrestling, but not in marriages, right?
Right. If it fails, you're screwed.
Right.
Or you can say, like, I'm sorry, I'll never do that again. So I asked, I said, I'd like to say this. And they said, no, you can't say asshole. It was WrestleMania.
It's a pay-per-view. People pay for it.
Pay-per-view. And they wouldn't let me say it. So I had to say, nice guys finished last. Thank God I'm Mr. Anderson or Mr. Kennedy or whatever. So, yeah.
Definitely doesn't have the same effect, obviously.
No, right.
All right, you're currently listening to part 1 right now with Ken Anderson. We're going to take just a really, really quick break and come back and conclude part 1 here. And again, remember, you can follow us on Twitter at Pencil Podcast, pencilpodcast.com, /Pencil Podcast on Facebook. And then again, part 2 with Ken, which we're going to cover his WWE days, will be next week here on the podcast.
Hey, Dave, what do you get when an atheist and a Christian start a podcast?
I don't know, Ken. What do you get when a Christian and an atheist start a podcast?
I don't know. You're the frickin' comedian. I figured you'd have some kind of joke or something.
Right. Hi, I'm David Vox Mullen.
And I'm Mr. Anderson.
Seriously?
Wait for it. Just wait for it. Anderson.
And we're the hosts of Push the Button on the DVM Podcast Empire.
It's a show where we discuss religion, politics, and sex. All that stuff that we're not supposed to talk about.
I am a Christian.
And I'm an ordained minister with the Church of the Flying Spaghetti Monster.
I think that's code for he's an atheist.
And together, we tackle any and every hot-button issue that the world is scared to talk about.
Yeah, we're not afraid of the truth.
Yeah, we're not afraid to piss people off.
We're not afraid to push the button.
So find us on iTunes.
Or simply visit us online at dvmpe.com. And God willing, you'll come back for more.
Yeah, God willing. That's you took the words right out of my mouth, Dave.
So your best promo, in my opinion, was your first promo you cut for TNA. One of the first ones when they gave you the opportunity to say the guys over there, and you kind of talked about, you alluded to WWE and about chewing bubble gum.
Yep.
It really seemed like it just came from the heart. I don't think it was bullet pointed or scripted, at least from when I watched it. They gave you freedom with that one?
So here's the funny story about that. We taped that in Orlando at Universal Studios. Vince was in charge at the time of creative. He gives me the script, and at the time I thought, I don't want to say anything too risque, too derogatory. Look, I could get fired from this place tomorrow and maybe have to go back to WWE. And so I went out there and I toned down a little bit. I didn't really say what I wanted to say. And I came back through the curtain and Vince came up to me and he pulled me aside and he was like, Ken, he's like, honestly, he's like, that's not what I wanted. He's like, you need to go out there and you need to this stuff that's been bothering you, get it off your chest. Do it. And we talked about it for about 10 minutes and he said, if it's okay with you, I'd like you to go out there and do it again. And so I said, well, we're in front of a live audience, obviously. How are we going to do this without being laughed out of the building.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, the only way to do it is to tell the truth, to be honest with them, and say, this is a scripted television show. In all other areas or aspects of entertainment, people get, this particular industry is mostly a one-take industry. But in certain circumstances, so anyway, I went out and I told the people, I said, look, we screwed up in the first take here. I'm going to basically do it over, and this is take 2. So I'd appreciate it if you'd help me out and be cool with it. And
that's funny.
Yeah, and then I went ahead and said the things that I said and talked about the fact that, Vince used to chew me out for chewing bubble gum, which to this day, it's funny because I remember as a kid things that would irritate my grandmother or my parents. If they'd see somebody on TV or whatever chewing bubblegum and talking a lot, they would always hone in on that particular aspect. Like, that's, look at that guy, the way he's smacking his gum, it's so annoying. And I just thought, I'm a heel. I'm a bad guy. I'm supposed to piss people off. I'm supposed to get under people's skin. And I got under Vince's skin, and I remember thinking, if I'm getting under your skin,
right,
and you've seen everything in this business, literally everything, don't you think the people are going to... Because I've always thought that the best, and I've heard Shawn Michaels talk about this, the best litmus test for something that's going to be over is if the boys pop for it. Because we're jaded. We've seen everything. Mm-hmm. And if the boys were popping for stuff that DX would do, that meant the people at home are going to definitely pop for it. So.
It was great. As a fan, watching that and thinking that there's an opportunity down the road to go back to WWE, I don't think Vince is dumb enough not to let you do that based on a promo. And he's a businessman; he knows that.
Yeah. People have said worse, right?
Oh yeah,
done worse.
Road Dogg said worse, and now he's an agent and he's one of the and so
the old VKM.
Yeah, VKM thing. January 9th, 2011, you won the TNA World Heavyweight Championship for the first time from Jeff Hardy. Excuse me. How was that for you?
It was cool.
It was cool.
I
mean, the second time you won it, you won it from Sting.
So this has got me in trouble in the past.
Okay.
But
we won't tell anybody.
I tend to think you won't tell anybody. I tend to think that honesty is the best policy. So here goes. At the end of the day, as we said before, wrestling is fake.
Mm-hmm.
It's an entertainment industry. We tell stories of good versus evil. And we have certain props that we use. And one of those props happens to be the titles. Now, I'm not trying to take anything away from... there is a difference between the WWE title, the TNA title, and...
NWA or whatever.
Whatever XSW or whatever wrestling on the independent scene.
Yeah.
That draws 50 people on a regular basis.
Huge difference.
There is a huge difference. So it was awesome. It was cool. And obviously Jeff is one of my favorite opponents that I've ever worked with.
And you got a chance to work with him over there, here, everywhere.
Yep,
so that's good.
But, it was great. It's just all I care about at the end of the day is telling stories. And yes, I want to be the guy. I want to be the central protagonist in the story. But yeah, that's sort of the way I feel.
Did you have a preference? I mean, not to bury anybody at all, but you worked Jeff in won over, lost the title basically a month later. Mm-hmm. Then you wrestled Sting, who obviously is an icon in pro wrestling.
Yeah.
Now, just recently made his debut over there.
Yeah.
As a kid, I'm sure when you were watching wrestling at 20, you were watching Sting. So, I mean, did either of those matches have more of a significant impact for you, or is they both kind of the same?
Well, I mean, both. I mean, I looked up to Jeff and I looked up to Sting. Sort of, to me, it was sort of equal. And, all those guys that I've gotten a chance to work with, Kurt, Jeff, Sting, Jeff Jarrett, Taker. I mean, it's just like every time I remember, and I know you wanted to get into this later, but I'll bring it up now. Like, the first time I worked with Undertaker was on a house show in Oklahoma. And I remember standing in the ring, and, you know, I got my entrance, did my thing, said my name twice, and then the lights went out, and you hear that gong for the first time. I got goosebumps.
Yeah.
I remember sitting there, standing in that ring, thinking, how did I get here? How did I, you know, I'm from Two Rivers, Wisconsin. How the freak did I get here? And, yeah, it was just that kind of stuff. And it's sort of like, you know, you hear people in this business talk about, especially the old timers, say like, oh, that guy's a mark. This guy's a mark. Or, you're acting like a mark. We're all freaking marks.
Thank you very much for saying that. I've been saying
I'm a mark. I'm such a mark that I decided that I was going to shave my body hair. I'm going to shave my legs, wear tights and baby oil, and pretend to fight other grown men for a living. Because I liked it so much. Because I was such a mark.
Right.
We're the biggest marks. So, yeah, every one of those moments was sort of a mark out moment for me. And it still is when I think back on it. I'm like, that's pretty cool that I did that. You know?
It's good. One of the big angles that you were involved in over the last, I mean, maybe not the last year, but 2 years prior to that was the Aces and Eights angle. A lot of people said, well, it's a ripoff of Sons of Anarchy. Sons was really big at that time. I don't know. I mean, I looked at it and I was like, I'm entertained by the entertainment value of it. I wasn't necessarily taken back by the entertainment value of it, but I know that I'm not your typical entertainment wrestling fan. I like the wrestling. But you were in that role. You got to work with Bubba Ray or Bully Ray at the end of it, which would have been fantastic, I would imagine. But that was a really highlight of the show. It really seemed like a lot of segments focused around you guys.
Yeah.
How was that? You know, did you guys all buy into it? Were you all behind the bullet on that certain angle?
At first, it was sort of presented to me. I didn't know what I was doing. And I don't necessarily know that creative knew what we were doing. You know, it wasn't like something that was mapped out for a year or a year and a half. As far as I know, I could be wrong. But it was, I remember I was a baby face, and Aces and Eights came in and beat me up, laid me out, took me out for a while. And I was going to be out for a while because of something, and I can't remember what it was. But I went home for a month or two, and then when I came back, they were like, "We're gonna try you. You know, we're gonna throw you in Aces and Eights and see what happens." And it just sort of grew week after week after week. And there were weeks where I would stand in the back row while, you know, younger talent would cut. They'd be cutting promos, and I would be just a guy. Okay. And I was okay, that's fine, you know. And then slowly but surely, you know, the storyline evolved to what it ended up being. Like I said, like you said, with Bully Ray.
Yeah, you ended up being the centerpiece at the end of it, which is good.
And that's the way I've always worked. You know, instead of being a politicker, I don't know if that's a word or not, but I think so.
In this business, it probably is.
It is. So, you know, instead of being a politicker, I'll just let my actions speak for themselves and my work speak for itself. And eventually they said, you know what, we want to have him be the guy that ends this whole thing. So, yeah, I you know what, at first I didn't know what to think, but as it went on, we actually became such good friends behind the scenes, all of us, because we spent so much time together doing the backstage interviews. You know, you do those backstage scenes, and you get a minute or a minute and a half of on-screen presence. It takes a couple hours to actually shoot those scenes. You got to get everybody in one location, and you got to set it all up, and then you got to shoot it a bunch of times and make sure that you've got a good take. So we spent a lot of time with each other and really got to know each other. And to be honest with you, like, Bully Ray has become like one of my favorite people that I've ever worked with in the business. Like, he's an extraordinary human being. He's tough on. He's sort of, when I got to TNA, I think when I got to WWE, he had already left.
Yeah.
But I had a chance to work with him him and Devon at OVW, and I had a good experience. But at the same time, everybody was like, be careful around Bully Ray because he's kind of a bully and this kind of stuff. And he's always had that reputation, which is why he then adopted the moniker of Bully Ray. But he's really not. He cares a lot about the business. He's very passionate, and he expects that you show respect to the people that came before you, the business, and to each other. So I have no problem with any of those things.
He was on Jim Ross's podcast. He alluded exactly to that. He's got the old school mentality. He said a lot of the guys now, instead of going out with the boys and having a drink, they'll go play video games or get on their cell phones and just text like crazy, and he misses that. So he wants to do that. And I think on the indie scene, particularly, a lot of people, we could use that on the indie scene. It's pretty awful at this point. How bad, maybe it doesn't hurt the TNA product, but the locker room morale, both AJ Styles and Bully Ray not re-signing and going elsewhere. I mean, obviously AJ's doing his whole thing on the indies, whatever he's doing. Bully Ray right now might maybe go back to New York, maybe just stay on the indie scene, but obviously you said he's one of your greatest friends or greatest people. He's not in the locker room anymore, so it might affect you personally. But I can imagine both those guys, because AJ was there since day one almost. I mean, they had a great influence on the locker room. Those guys will be missed. How do you...
So, one of the sort of inevitable things in this business is that you learn to just roll with... People get fired and hired all the time. Look at how many times Jim Ross has been fired from WWE.
Right.
He was fired and hired. Like, nobody would ever imagine. Look at Jim Ross right now and the work that he's done in this business. Who would ever think in a million years that guy's been fired a couple times and then rehired and fired and rehired? And you just, that's just the way the business operates, unfortunately. You get fired, and then you get rehired, and then you get fired, and you rehired. Sable brought a huge lawsuit against the WWE. Nobody ever thought she would get rehired. People get hired, get fired, rehired all the time. Never say never in this business. You hear these things all the time.
You know I'm bringing that back up later, right?
Go ahead. Please. But, it sucks that both of those guys, because both of those guys are very good friends of mine, and they're very good friends and influences to a lot of guys in the locker room, young and old. And just it's just the nature of the business. It's the nature of the beast.
Do you feel a sense of weight now, maybe on your shoulders, that since they're gone and they've been in the business for a long time and they've been there, you've also been there quite a while, and maybe you already took this quite a while ago, but now it's your job to mentor some of the younger guys coming up through Impact.
So I've always taken the approach that I don't necessarily help people unless they ask for help. And this goes for independent shows as well, which is crazy to me because I'll go to independent shows. I remember being an indie guy myself, and anytime there was somebody who had been to the dance that would be on one of those shows, I would sit at the curtain, I would watch the matches, I would ask them specifically, will you watch my match? Will you give me some feedback? I would pick their brains as much as I could. Unfortunately, a lot of times when I go to these independent shows, I don't get that.
Right.
And maybe that's just because they don't respect me. I don't know.
I think they're scared for the most part. They assume that you don't watch the match because you are this name in the business.
But when people generally ask me, come up and say, will you watch my match? I'll go watch the match, and I'll try to give you some honest feedback. And, but what I'm trying to say is that I don't necessarily... I look at myself as a leader, but I don't just assume that role naturally. If somebody asks me for advice, I will gladly give it, and I try to lead by example. I try to walk the walk. I don't just try to talk a bunch of crap.
When I first met you, Jesus, 11 years ago, I asked you for your advice, and you gave it to me, but I was one of those guys who came up to you. I can't remember what I asked you, to be honest with you, but we actually had a good conversation for like half hour. We talked about your tattoo on your back, because I had one too, and about going through that. But then we also talked about wrestling, and you were great. And it's funny, and we're going to allude to this here in part 2, is you and Sean Navarre kind of came up together through the independents. Sean was actually a prick to me.
Really?
Yeah, Sean was a big prick to me.
Prick.
But when he came back, and I've worked shows, since then, he's been awesome, and I've become good friends with his brother. But you were really good. But I think that's one of the things as younger talent, we were scared. I was scared to even approach you because this was the first time I met you, and I'm just like, this is Ken Anderson. We know he's going to sign soon. He's the best talent around here. But you were very helpful. Austin Ayers was very helpful, and like I said, Sean at first wasn't, but he definitely came around to it. It's one of those.
But he's
things.
A prick. I mean,
it is what it is. One thing, I'm going to get into the word association with TNA in a second, but I saw over the summer some of the house show houses that you guys were drawing.
Yeah.
And they were worse than some of the indie shows that I was on here.
Yeah.
Can you explain that? And maybe you weren't on these shows. I don't know if you were or were not, but they were
I was on all
pretty
of them.
bad.
I was on all of them, yeah. It was tough. I don't know. Again, I am a wrestler. So I am an employee of this company, and my job is to wrestle. Is to go out there and pretend to fight, wear tights and pretend to fight other grown men and tell the best story of good versus evil. There are other people whose job it is to advertise and
marketing, sell tickets,
promote, and put. And I look at all kinds of, I guess, entertainment endeavors out there, and there are just some terrible products out there that draw huge numbers, in my humble opinion. And it's generally because of marketing.
Do you think the product on TV
look at the WWE? A lot of people complain about the product, but it still does. It's not going away anytime soon, and it's because they're marketing geniuses. And I don't know. I that's not my area of expertise, but there would be times where we would be at and this happened to me when I was in WWE too. So I'm not just saying that it's a TNA thing. Mm-hmm. It's just a business wide thing. We would be at gyms. We would go to the local Gold's Gym, and somebody would come up and say like, "What are you guys doing here? Why are you here?" It would be AJ Styles and Frankie Kazarian and Chris Daniels and I would go to the gym, and Gunner would go to the gym, and you'd have some local guy come up and say, What are you guys doing here? I've been a wrestling fan my whole life, and we've got a show that's 2 miles away from this very building that we're standing in right now.
Yeah, that's a problem.
That kind of stuff is just I don't know. I don't know what to do about that.
I was worried. I think that's when people got worried that things weren't looking great for the future of Impact.
And I think that's where, John Gaborik came in and took over for talent relations. He's basically Dixie's right hand. And he came in and he looked at that whole scenario, and he said, there's a problem here. And we need to rectify that. And so for the time being, we're going to stop doing this. We're going to stop doing these house shows. We're going to figure this out. We're going to build this from the ground up again. And sometimes I think that's the best. That is the best avenue of approach. Stop the bleeding. And
I don't know if we talked about this earlier on the podcast or maybe before we started recording, how Travis and I both said that in the last 6 months we felt that the product with Impact has been much better than what it was beforehand.
Yeah.
I've heard Jim Ross say that. I've heard Stone Cold say that. Guys who watch the product also think that what they're seeing on TV is much better now. Was there something that happened behind the scenes? Was there a change in creative direction? Because I enjoy it a lot now. And like I mentioned to you, and I respect everything that you do, but I had a really hard time watching some of it just because the wrestling at some points wasn't that great, and the entertainment to me was eh. Yeah. But, I mean, you guys have been tearing it up the last 6 months.
So, yeah, there was a change. And I remember we had a meeting, and I believe it was in New York, where John Gaborik sat everybody down and said, Look, we've been very sort of constrictive with your time limits out there. We're telling you to go out there and tell a good wrestling story in 9 minutes all the time. We know that you guys are some of the best talent in the world. You should be given the opportunity to go out there and wrestle and perform and tell your stories. So we're going to do that. We're going to try to be a little more receptive and open to your input. And we're going to let you guys go out there and wrestle and do what you do best. You know, you've got guys like Austin Aries. Austin Aries needs, you know, in my humble opinion, he should be given a 30-minute match.
Every night. Good.
Well, you don't want to give stuff like that away all the time. That's something
true.
that you build to. But, you know, once a month or once every 2 months, give those, you know, Bobby Roode. You need to give these guys. I think I can definitely, you know, I can hold my own in those scenarios. Like when you're given 9 minutes to tell a story, it's really hard to do that sometimes.
Right.
And they definitely said, we're going to start letting you guys go out there and perform. We're going to cut the crap. So, yeah, I think that was the big change. And I think they let guys sort of be a little more creative with their matches. And, you know, again, and I'm not, look, WWE has a business model. They have certain things that they say, this is the way that we want things done. That's their prerogative. That's fine. When I was at WWE, there were times where I would literally be told out of one side of the mouth, guys need to learn to go out there and just work without calling anything in the back. You just need to like literally look at each other and just go out to the ring and wrestle. And honestly, a lot of times in WWE, that's what would happen.
Actually, I enjoy that.
Matt Hardy, we did a 3-segment match. We were told that we were going to wrestle each other 3 minutes before we went out there. And we went out and had 3 segments, and it's one of my favorite matches that I've ever had.
It's gratifying.
In my history.
To be able to call it all in the ring?
Yes, and I would credit most of that calling it in the ring to Matt Hardy because he's just freaking Matt Hardy, and he's been in the business for so long, and he's really good at what he does. You know, out of one side of the mouth, it would be guys need to learn to go out there and work. But for this particular match, what I want you to do is you punch him 3 times, and then you back up to the corner, and then he goes for a 4th one, and you duck, and then you hit him once, and he hulks up on you, and you back off, and then you go for a clothesline, and he ducks it, and you boot him. I mean, literally, they would call every single thing to you and say, this is the way we want you to do it. And they would write it down, and then you would go out there, and if you would deviate from said script, you would be punished. Now, out of one side of the mouth, we're told,
right,
you need to be able to go out there and just call it on the fly. Out of the other side of the mouth, and actually the side of the mouth that has the punishment associated with it, do it this way. This is, and when you take a backdrop, this is how you sit up and you put your hand on your chin and you sell it in this fashion. And when you fire up, you go around to all 4 corners and you look up at the last row and this kind of stuff, rather than letting guys just look. Sometimes you got to let guys sink or swim on their own accord.
Plus, you got to listen to the crowd. I mean, if you're going off a script like that, you're going to have a comeback and the crowd's dead. I mean, I cringe. And if they can see it.
Number one thing that I learned in wrestling. If you go out there with A, B, C, D, E, F, and G planned out, and at B, the crowd is sitting on their hands,
right,
you need to be able to mix it up and figure out something else. Like, maybe you need to give them something different. If you're giving them a technical match and they're just, they're getting up to go get popcorn, maybe you need to do something else. You need to give them some comedy.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So, I was going to say, before we get into the word association or name association, you have your own podcast.
Yes.
It's called Push the Button.
Yep.
People can get that on iTunes.
Yep,
correct?
iTunes, Stitcher, or you can go directly to DVMPE.com. David Vox Mullen podcastempire.com, basically.
But you guys cover controversial issue, or at least issues in the media, issues in religion, but they're controversial with the statements that you guys make. It's entertaining. It's good. The brass at B at TNA, do they have a problem with you doing this?
Not that I know of. In fact, I've been approached that they want to sort of bring it onto the TNA website. TNA would like to start to sort of promote my podcast. And that was a question that I had early on. I was like, look, we talk about controversial things. I am pretty opinionated about certain issues. But I'm also, I'm opinionated, but I'm open-minded at the same time. I could be wrong about everything. That's the whole purpose of us doing this podcast. Are you guys okay with that? And they said yes. So I'm hoping, and I'm assuming that that'll happen in the next year, that TNA will sort of pick up and start to promote my podcast.
Which would be awesome.
As well as some other podcasts, too.
So I'd say if you were over on the other side, this probably wouldn't fly. I couldn't imagine.
I don't know.
I mean, obviously you can't speak for him. We're not,
not there.
But
I don't know. And the thing is you have to look at, is it in the business's best interest for me to do this? Could it hurt TNA's business if they have me talking? If I go on TV right now, today, when we debut on Destination America, and I talk about one of these controversial issues, chances are, depending on how I present myself, we're going to lose 50%. I'm going to lose 50% of my
right.
50% of the people are going to disagree with me, and 50% are going to agree with me. So is that going to be a positive thing for Impact Wrestling as a whole? And I totally get that. I understand that. And I don't think that employment is a freedom of, Phil, what's his name? Phil Robertson from Duck Dynasty.
Oh, yep.
Duck Dynasty is one of the biggest television shows. It was one of the biggest. I think it's sort of jumped the shark now, but it was one of the biggest television shows on A&E. He made some controversial statements about homosexuality.
Right.
And, he was basically suspended from the network. And people kept saying, "Oh, this is a freedom of speech issue." It's not. It's not a freedom of speech issue, in my opinion.
I agree with you.
It's not, because you have freedom of speech in this country. That doesn't mean that you don't have, that you're immune to any repercussions that come because of the things you say. If I right now if I drop a bunch of N-bombs
exactly
on the show right now, I am not immune to the repercussions that I might face because of those. And so that's the sort. And my employer is, they don't want to hurt their business. So if I'm running around dropping a bunch of N-bombs and saying a bunch of ridiculous things and ignorant things, they have to look at it from a business standpoint and say, like, is this best for our business? Yes or no?
Plus, probably Lashley would probably kick your ass.
I hope you would. MVP. And
yeah, MVP as well, who's actually a really good friend of yours.
So is Bobby Lashley, honestly. So.
Kurt Angle, huge in WWE, just re-signed with TNA as well. There was a lot of talk of him going to WWE. You've had an opportunity to work with him numerous times. As far as word association, if you can sum up Kurt Angle in a couple sentences, what would you say about the man?
One word: cyborg.
Cyborg. Explain.
He's a machine. He's part human, part machine.
He's got no ACLs in both his knees, right? Or something going on there?
He's got no neck. He's had 3 neck surgeries.
But I've heard Austin say he's been the quickest man to ever pick up this business. How good is he actually in that ring? He's
unbelievable, and if you wrestle him, and if you are not able to adapt to his, a lot of wrestling is beats, right?
Right.
Everything's done in beats. If you rush things get jumbled up. If you pile this move on top of this move on top of this move, you don't something happens in the match and you don't allow time for the people to actually grasp a hold of what you've done and let it sink in emotionally, it can sometimes be it's like listening to a comedian that just like fires off joke after joke after joke after joke after joke, and you hear every third or fourth one, and your brain is trying to process everything else, and it becomes a jumbled mess. There's a guy that used to do the news for Saturday Night Live.
Old school, like
conservative politician, or not a politician, but like he.
It's not Seth Meyers.
Before him. Anyway, whatever. He's kind of one of those guys that just fires things off, and you just pick up every like fifth or sixth thing that he says. In sort of the same sense, if you can't adapt to Kurt's just like, it's just constant kinetic energy, just go. It's intense, but man, you got to be in shape when you work Kurt.
I bet,
because he goes and Kurt's in shape. Kurt's got to be 45 years old now, at least.
Right?
Looks maybe older than that. He could run circles around most guys that I know.
I mean, he beat Brock Lesnar in a shoot. So I mean, that's.
He's a tough son of a bitch, and he is one of the smartest guys that I've ever worked with. When I worked with Kurt, generally, Kurt would come to me and say, "Here, I've got our match all planned out already." Literally, I would show up at the building, and Kurt would say, "Like, here's what I have planned out." Bam, 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 and he would lay it out for you, and then he'd say, "What do you think?" And I'd say, "Well, how about if we do this here instead? Because this is, yep, I like that. What about if we maybe do this instead here? Yep, I like that too." And it's a collective sort of experience. It's a collective.
Sounds like an easy payday, though.
Totally, and that's the way that I felt. That's the way that I felt about a lot of guys. Like a lot of guys that I've worked with in my career have been, in my humble opinion, easy paydays, because all you have to do is literally go out there and worry about your stuff, and making sure that you sell their stuff and you make them look as good as you possibly can. Taker, first time I ever worked with Taker, he literally said, we didn't talk about anything in the locker room. Nothing was talked about. Nothing. He said, just listen to me. All right. Booker T, first time I ever worked with him. Let's just listen to me out there. We'll just talk to each other. Okay. Bob Holly. I walked up to Bob Holly. So the first couple weeks that I was on house shows for WWE, I worked with Scotty Tuhati. Mm-hmm. And we talked out some stuff. And some stuff we just worked on the fly. And then the next guy that I was given was Bob Holly, and I had always heard like Bob will test you. Bob's one of those guys that. And I remember I walked up to him and just out of respect, I said, "Hey Bob, I guess we're working with each other tonight. What would you like to do?" And he said, "We're gonna fucking go out there and work. That's what we do around here. We work." And I said, "Yes, sir."
Sounds good, Bob.
Sounds good to me. And I went out there, and we had a great match. And at one point, he was chopping me in the corner. And and he said, "Turn me around and chop me." And I gave him a chop. And I said, "Turn me around, give me 10 chops." And
how'd your chest look?
Like freaking raw hamburger. But it was one of those instances where, and we just had such a good chemistry where I listened to him, and if I had an idea, yeah, that's great, let's do that. But yeah, I forget where I was going with that story, but
we're just one with great people that you've worked.
Yeah.
Kurt Angle, and the only reason I'm bringing up the WWE Hall of Fame is because it's the biggest quote unquote Hall of Fame. I mean, TNA has their thing. Kurt Angle belong in the WWE Hall of Fame?
Absolutely.
Sting. He's never worked in WWE until recently. Obviously, he has his track record with WCW. He's there now for how long?
WWE owns WCW now.
Correct.
Right?
Yep.
So, absolutely.
That's what I think.
And he's Sting. He's Sting. And to some degree, the WWE Hall of Fame is the Wrestling Hall of Fame.
Yeah. I know, is that one in
It
Iowa?
really is. That's the way that it's looked at. Even though there's no Canton yet.
There will be.
I think there will be, and I've heard
Probably Orlando.
rumors. Orlando.
Yeah, at the Performance Center.
Yeah, definitely.
I know you don't watch wrestling. We talked about that beforehand. But
before we went on air,
yeah, will you?
It's funny because I have people all the time that come up to me and this guy over here said that you're a wrestler. I don't watch wrestling, and my joke is always like, I don't watch wrestling either.
Well, I mean, WrestleMania, it's the other company, but Sting wrestles. You have utmost respect for Sting, along with Taker's back on and all these other guys. Will you tune in for those events?
Absolutely, I always do. I don't tune in for much, but WrestleMania every year and the Hall of Fame and things like that. I do love this business, and I do have the utmost respect for the people that I've worked with, the people that have come before me in the business, and those scenarios. I just, it's an opportunity for me to go back and be a fan, just a total fan, and enjoy. So, yeah.
Well, we're going to talk about your WrestleMania moment and WB Days here on part 2 coming up next week. But obviously, TNA Impact Wrestling will debut tomorrow on Destination America. It's going to be an awesome experience for you guys. I hope it's very successful. The 4 pay-per-views a year, I think, are great. I wish nothing but success for Impact and all the other promotions, but for you specifically, because you're a Midwest guy, you're an indie guy.
We're in your house right now.
You're in your house right now. But if promoters are listening now and they want to book you on the indie scene, what's the best way to go? Because you're on Twitter, you're on Instagram, but I mean, you really can't book people via Instagram per se. But
sure.
How do they get a hold of you, and how would they book you?
Anderson.bookings@gmail.com is the best way to get a hold of me, and we'll see if we can make something work out.
Sweet. All right. Well, we'll be back with you next week.
All right.
Obviously, we'll talk the olden days, you old geezer.
Tremendous. So you guys are going to come back next week? Is that the deal?
Well, we'll figure it out. So we're going to do it. We're going to do a TNA taping here tonight. So we are at Pencil Podcast on Twitter, pencilpodcast.com. I'm at Real Renny D. At Travis Mester, at Mr. Ken Anderson. Is that the Twitter?
So Twitter is Mr. Ken Anderson.
Yes.
And Instagram is Mr. spelled out, Mister Ken Anderson.
No nudie pics, ladies.
Is your Instagram all your children now or not?
I would say 75%. It used to be
There's a picture of a dog.
90%. 90% was just dog stuff.
Yeah.
So I've never been one. I know you guys are getting ready to go here, but I've always hated selfies. I hate them.
Bullshit.
It bothers me. It really does.
It's all I see on your Instagram.
No, that's not true.
The video. Happy New Year.
Yeah, that was the one selfie. But the selfies of guys in the gym and that kind of stuff, it drives me insane. These guys, it's just like narcissism has become this thing in society. Everybody wants to be a celebrity, and we do that by showing hey, look at what you're not experiencing by being with me, or by being my boyfriend or my girlfriend or whatever. So yeah, I've tried to shy away from selfies and stuff. I've always tended to stick more towards taking pictures of things that I see, and the things that I see regularly now are my children.
And you might be, a couple weeks here, you might be taking pictures of the Vince Lombardi Trophy.
Hey, well, I don't want to jump the gun, but that'd be fantastic.
Would be fantastic. All right, we will be back with you next week, man. Hey, everybody, you're listening to The Pencil, a professional wrestling podcast hosted by me, Renny D, and my friends. Each and every Tuesday, we come at you with a new episode on iTunes, PodBean, Stitcher, and YouTube, where we discuss the previous week's product on television, as well as the ins and outs of professional wrestling news and rumors. We'll also bring you exciting guests to bring you their perspective on professional wrestling. Follow us on Twitter at Pencil Podcast.